So welcome everyone to our first webinar in our summer series for families of incoming new students. We call this one a welcome and introduction to family programs at Tulane. I'm your presenter. I am Penny Wyatt. I'm the Director of Family Programs here at Tulane, and I've been in that role for many years, and I've been at Tulane for a long time. And I really value being able to help new families in this transition phase, and then all along all the time that your student will be at Tulane. So please consider me a resource and guide for you as family members, and you'll have all my contact information at the end of the webinar as well. So I'll tell you just a little bit more about myself. I have worked at Tulane for, let's just say, more years than your student has been on this earth. And I really do love my experience at Tulane, and I'm so happy to share what's unique and wonderful and valuable and special about Tulane with our students and our families. I've worked in both student affairs and academic affairs, and for most of my career at Tulane, I've worked more directly with students, but mostly in different roles where there was a focus on first-year students. So I really have a strong interest in that transition phase for new students. And all along those different roles, I already had significant conversations and input from parents, and a lot of programming and outreach to parents as well. So this was a great way for me to use that background at Tulane to serve the families of our students. And so I hope that you will learn to rely on family programs and reach out to me when you need help. I can offer, broad general information. I get specific information from my colleagues in different areas of the university. And so I know procedures and resources, but if you have a question and I don't know, then I will connect you with the subject matter expert in that area of the university that you have questions about. So again, relax, follow along. You'll get access to the slides and the recording later if you want to reference that again. And I'm so happy to have you here. And so you heard a little bit about me. I would like to learn a little bit about you. So I'm really interested to know, if you'll use the raise your hand function in your control panel, how many of you are new first-time parents at Tulane? So, this is your first student to in your family to go away to the university. Okay, so I see that is really most of the folks who are with us tonight. So that's great. So thank you so much. So now I would like to know how many of you are parents who are experienced with college students. So maybe you already have another student who's in college right now, or your last youngest student, child in your family is embarking on their college experience this year. So raise your hand if that is you. So you all can't see this, but those hands are throwing up confetti and they're waving at me. So whether it's the first child in your family to go away to college or the last one, I know that might mean that you have varying degrees of need for information to parallel your student's experience. What can be really helpful, even if you have had several students in your family already go to college and graduate, it's still really useful to get the Tulane specific information. And so I hope that you will rely on family programs for that to the degree that you need that. I'd also be interested in knowing how many of you have multiple students at Tulane in this coming year, whether you've got multiples in the same class year or you might have an older student who is here already. It's always kind of interesting for me to know that. And then I'd also be interested in knowing how many of you might be Tulane alumni. So that's always sort of an interesting take on things too. And especially for those last two categories, I do want to stress that things have changed. So they've changed a lot since you were here as a student, if you're an alumna or alumnus. And even procedures get refined and programmatic things can change or new things arise, even if you have a student who started a few years ago. So I do want you to rely on the official information from family programs so that you get the current, most up-to-date information. So make sure you're getting that from, anything that we email you, the websites for all the different aspects of the university, and then especially from our webinars and newsletters. So in this first part, before we get into more detail, I want to just acknowledge that for all of you, even if you already have a student who is in college, your student going to college, and usually for our parents, their students are coming from far away. The average is over 900 miles that students travel to come to Tulane. Even if you are a parent who lives a couple of blocks away from our campus, it's still a transition in your life, in the life and dynamics of your family. And we recognize that. And so we want to acknowledge that and support you in that new phase of your life as well. And I think what's really important to know is that we understand that for your student to grow and develop, your role does change. And so you change from being the manager or director of your student to more of a coach and consultant and supporter. And sometimes that's a hard transition to make. So we're going to give you some guidance for that. I think that one of the best things we can do to support you in that is provide information so that you don't feel like you're in the dark and wondering what's being provided for your student, what opportunities are available, or what the procedures are that you might need to help with. And so I'm especially going to point out some of those things for you. But I do want to encourage you to consider that you're not doing for them. Do expect your student to take on more responsibility and lean into the new role this summer. This is a good time to go ahead and put your student in the driver's seat and help them make that transition from a high school student to a college university student. I do think that oftentimes you need to trust but verify, and I'll give you some little tips on how to do that well. And consider this sort of the equivalent to a training wheels time, this summer especially. And so you can kind of run along behind your student or kind of know what they need to do. You can give them some guidance, and you can take some cues from what we'll provide. And of course that you need to do that more in this transition from high school to college, and maybe perhaps in the first year. So that may, as they learn how to navigate their way at Tulane and become more familiar, more adept in managing systems and understanding the policies and being more aware of all the things that are available to them, then your role can diminish in terms of those kinds of things. And you can be the happy supporter and encourager of all that they accomplish and learn. So in the way that we approach this, in terms of the staff and faculty at Tulane, our approach to the students is that they are adults, emerging adults, and we understand that that's a lot to take on. They're learning a lot of new things. They've got multifaceted responsibilities when they get here, and even before they arrive. And so we recognize that, but we do want to have them be in charge of those things, and we are all set up to help them learn how to do that. But we still want to partner with parents and family members to make sure that students access all those wonderful resources, so that we can support, all of us can support their transition and their growth and their development. So I'll point out some of the things that I believe are some of the most significant transition elements for parents, and tell you about how we can help you manage those. So one of those things is access to information. So that changes very much at the university level than it would have been while your student was in their K through 12 experience. So I'll ask all of you again, let me know, raise your hands if while they were in their K through 12 experience, you as a parent had access to an online dashboard that showed you their attendance records, even their assignments and their grades. So, I know that that exists at a lot of places. A lot of schools have that. So I want you to take a deep breath and kind of get prepared for this, but that doesn't exist at the college level. And that's because there are federal statutes that govern that. So there are regulations that protect university students' right to privacy. And so that can be kind of anxiety provoking for some families. But I want to explain to you kind of why we do that. We do feel like, they have a right to those records. They need to be in control of who can access those or who that information is shared with. And so we do ask that parents not use their passwords. They have gotten their Tulane user ID and passwords, but we definitely need parents to respect that that is the way students access a lot of important systems at Tulane. And we need students to not share their passwords because that compromises the security of those systems. And sometimes we've had parents who accidentally fell for phishing schemes because they were reading their student's email account from Tulane, and various different things. So there, in addition to just the fact that there are laws governing, their right to their privacy, there are just some security issues because those things are online. So we would ask you to respect both of those things. So the students can give parents online access to their accounts receivable account, and that's what the billing department at Tulane is called. And when I give this presentation in person, people kind of groan or laugh a little bit. But that is a separate system that they can do for you. And we'll send you information in the newsletter about how you can do that, how they can do that. So they can set it up so that you'll get a password to be able to access the billing statements. And you can also pay online that way too. So be aware of that. Otherwise, count on the communications that you'll receive from me and from family programs and other departments to keep you apprised of things so that those can become talking points that you can have with your student just to keep up with them. And so I'm always trying to give you that information ahead of time before you'll need it so that you can stay apprised. And I'll point out really specifically in this webinar and in upcoming webinars and in the newsletter if there is something that you really need to help your student do, or where there is a significant thing coming up for your student that I think you'll want to have a family consultation about. So so rely on us for that. I think another big transition element is just in communication with your student, and that can be anxiety provoking too, because you don't see them every day. You don't know everything that's going on or where they are at all times. Now, certainly, the ability to communicate so easily with your family is so different from when you were in college or I was in college. So you've got a lot more mechanisms to do that. Even so, even if right now your student texts you many, many times a day, be prepared for the fact that the frequency might change once they get here to Tulane. And you might need to create a new pattern. So you might even need to have a conversation about having some intentional kind of way to catch up. And so whether you want to do that with a weekly phone call that you all plan at a certain time when you both are more likely to be free, or you're going to do that over Zoom so you can actually see their face, or use up some other kind of like web-based thing so that you can see them, video chats and such, then that might help. But I do want you to just be ready for the fact that that might change, and that might make you feel a little anxious because you're not seeing them and hearing them as frequently as you used to. And then another element that I want to point out is that we all have to understand that life is really different for this generation, and that comes about in so many aspects of their life. And some elements might be the same, but maybe the frequency or the potential for negative consequences is greater than when you might have been in your university experience. And so, some of the things like how students might have, manage use of alcohol and drugs, understanding consent and sexual relationships, understanding what the risk might be for sexual assault. Those are things that we certainly we hate having happen, but we need to be prepared for those. And so we're going to also help you consider those and give you some ways to support your student and how they learn about those and manage those. And even managing mental health is another thing that's significantly different than it was years ago. The good thing is that we have lots of resources for helping students manage those things, learn about those different elements of their life, and get resources and support when they need it. Another big thing, of course, is just the prevalence of social media. And that is just such a big part of their lives. And the social media that students use right now is even different from the social media that their parents rely on. And so there's even a generational shift in that, even within the use of social media. So sometimes that can intensify stress, anxiety, comparison to other people that can be a negative influence. And so I know that is, you all are more aware of that, and there's much more information about that in just the popular press and in what you hear from people who assist families than we even did, 10 years ago. So it's another thing to be aware of. And a couple of other things that I think play into that is that this is a big transition for a lot of students, and developing new friendships is really important, of course, to students, young adults in this age range. It's appropriate for them, their social networks, their ability to relate to people, just the kinds of things that they are looking to for their reference points change a lot. And so it can be kind of jarring for them to go from home where they had a friendship group established, especially for some of your students who may have gone to the same schools or been with the same cohort of classmates for, perhaps their whole K through 12 experience, or for, everything from junior high and high school or something. And so reminding students that it takes time and intention to cultivate relationships in this phase of their life. They're going to interact with people differently. In some ways, they'll never be around as many of their peers as they are while they're at the university, but it can just be a big transition to go from friends from home to starting new, and being present here and not over relying on their friends from home and high school, and staying connected with them all the time, and not looking to their present reality here at the university, and really trying to cultivate friendships and putting themselves out there and trying new things and kind of developing some new habits that support them in that way. We understand that at this stage of young adults' development, that reliance on peers is very, very important. And we even know that they would much rather get information and education from their peers. How many of you as parents can attest to the fact that sometimes they just want to tune out the adults in their life? And so we at Tulane understand that, recognize it, and we work to utilize peer helpers so that we can actually work with that proclivity to rely on peers instead of working against it. So you'll hear more about that as we go on. So they have a lot of balls to keep in the air, a lot of things to juggle, and transitions to navigate simultaneously. So it's both academic and social transition that they are managing. And so we understand that can be challenging. And so what we want to do is help them understand that challenge is useful, it's normal, it is not something to run away from, and that we have lots of support for them. And so we're always trying to kind of meet them where they are and help them get to the next level so that they don't sort of stall in being over challenged. And so we always want to help them with that. And we would want you as their family members that if you ever feel like they are overwhelmed, then I want you to look back to these resources that we are sharing with you, suggest those to your students, kind of nudge them again. They're certainly going to hear about all of this themselves, but when they are overwhelmed or they're trying to navigate so many things at once, it can be helpful to have some reminders from family as well. In some ways, they will never again be immersed in such a resource-rich environment with so many people and programs and structures that are designed to support them and help them in that transition and that growth and development, and so many people who are eager to help them. That's what we're here for. So we want you to help us remind them of that always. So you'll hear more about all of those things as we go. But tonight, I want to get into some more depth. I want to briefly review the resources that are offered by the Office of Family Programs, so you know what kinds of things you can rely on and what to anticipate. And then I'll discuss this important summer transition time, both the practical aspects of that and the sort of intellectual and emotional mindset aspects for your students. So this is where I'm helping you kind of know how to be the training wheels. So I know that it might sound like I said, we want your student to direct everything, but now I'm going to tell you a lot to help you, but I can still give you this information and you can still be in that consultant supporter role. And I can show you the things that are most important, especially in this transition phase. There's a lot that students have not done for themselves at this point. So I'll point those things out where I think families can make the most difference. And that way you know what to focus on. So I'm going to move along and just show you a few more things about how to sort of understand what family programs can offer you. So you can break it down into these components. We offer communication, answers, information, connection, and most important, reassurance to you. That's our overall goal. So the communication aspects is primarily through the newsletters. I feel like all of you must have received the newsletter and read it, or you wouldn't have registered for this webinar tonight. We also provide some like quick ways to find answers through the website. So that's something to remember. And I've tried to compile things so you don't have to look through the whole Tulane website. You can look at the family website. We're providing information in a lot of different ways, and that's especially through the webinars and tutorials. So that's where you can get more detail. And then we also opportunities for connection through the events that we have. And again, as I said, the main goal of all of this is to give you reassurance. So I just want to briefly show you this. And remember, you don't have to write this down. You'll have access to these slides so you can find these references again. So mostly I want you to remember that families.tulane.edu is the website that you can go to. You'll see I have a little blue circle here or oval. That's where the menu is. I know that photograph on the front page is so large, it kind of gets hard to see how to navigate things. So I want you to know that's where you'll navigate, and you'll find sections on communication, events, resources, even travel resources. And so a site that you might want to bookmark is this families.tulane.edu/info. That gets you to that shortcut list of quick links. I do want to take a moment and stress that's very, very important. Please rely on official family programs, communications, and other Tulane websites and other Tulane social media for current, accurate policy and procedure information. I know that there are some parent Facebook groups out there, but they are not managed or by anybody at Tulane. They're not moderated or monitored by people at Tulane. And sometimes there can be parents of older students or parents whose students have even graduated, and they might offer advice that is outdated. And so, procedures have changed, things get refined, new programs emerge. And so we would just want you, especially where it's policy and procedure information, look to the information that I will provide you. So that's very, very important. Again, I said, we have a mechanism for providing more detailed information. That's the webinars, and sometimes we have pre-recorded tutorials. So we give that for sort of that just-in-time instruction or other guidance that might be something that's a little bit more long-term. So those are always announced in the newsletters, and they are also posted on the website, and you register there. If you miss a webinar, you can always find the links later to the videos and the slides on the website. And so here are a couple of other upcoming webinars in the next couple of weeks here that were promoted in the newsletter already. So you'll have a chance to look at those. So we also offer some events. Certainly, since our students are from so far away, most of you are going to be here, for specific events, and they might be more limited than if your student was, say, just going to college 2 hours down the road. So we really value the time that we can have you here on campus and want you to take advantage of that as much as you can. One of those big events is Family Weekend, and I just want to note that at Tulane, Family Weekend is combined with homecoming and reunion for alumni, so it's one big, huge community celebration, and it goes by the term Wave Weekend. So Wave 24 is the one that will be coming up in November. There'll be more detailed information going out about that in the newsletters and through emails as well. Another set of events that aren't managed by my office, but I help support some of that, is a series of receptions that are called Hello Wave receptions. And those are in a set of cities over this summer. So if you live in one of those cities where the reception's being hosted by usually an alumna family, an alumnus family, or current parents whose students are already here, then something will be sent to you to invite you to those. And students and parents are welcome to come to those. It gives students in that city a chance to meet other students who are going to Tulane that they may not already know, and gives the same kind of opportunity for parents. Those will be announced more in the upcoming newsletters as well. So for those events, whether it's coming here for move-in, or when you come for commencement at the end of your students' time here, most of you have some significant travel to arrange to do that. So I wanted you to know that on our website, we've got helpful resources. There's a Tulane travel portal through which you can book lodging in New Orleans and get some discounted rates. We also have some corporate rental car discounts that are listed there. And then occasionally we announce discount airline rates for specific events. And so those, if those have been secured for particular events like move-in or Family Weekend, we'll announce them in the newsletter, and they'll be detailed on the event website. So all of the links to those are on the Family Programs website under the tab Events. So that gives you some basic overview about what Family Programs does in general and throughout your students' whole time here. So I want to focus now on what is probably uppermost in your mind, is how to keep your students' transition to Tulane on track. And so again, we want your student to assume the main responsibility for this, but I know you're going to be there supporting them. So, in this key time between high school to university, there is this summer, and we want you all to have a good summer and make the most of it. And for some of you, it's kind of bittersweet. You might think this might be the last summer that my student is home full time over the next several years. And we also understand that for a lot of your students, they are still in high school right now, and they're in a very critical part of their high school experience. They might still be taking final exams. They might still be having a prom and their graduation exercises and all of that. And so we completely understand that getting your student to focus now on all of the new things coming up at Tulane can be kind of tough. So we want to acknowledge that and show you all the things that we're doing to try to help your family make that a smooth transition and make it something that's useful and comfortable for your student and for you as well. So I'm going to give you some key things for you to do to help keep that transition on track. So one of the most important, please help all of us at Tulane by reminding your student to check their Tulane email frequently. I know that this generation of students does not find email as their preferred go-to communication mechanism. They're texting, they're using, all kinds of different social media. They just use other things more than email, but they have to get adept at this, and they have to get really regular and committed to it, because Tulane email is considered the university's official way to communicate with your student. So they're held responsible for the deadlines that are communicated through email, for announcements of things they need to do. And so please remind your student to check their Tulane email frequently. I know that that's kind of a new thing for them. So please, check in and ask them if they're looking at that. And quite frankly, I would say they need to check it a couple of times a week at least in the next several weeks. But really, by the time we're in mid-June, they should just sort of adopt the habit of checking it every day. They'll need to do that once they're here anyway, so it's a good habit to get into. And so even if there's not anything new on a particular day, if they're checking every day, that'll mean that they're less likely to miss something. So please help make that reminder. The other thing too is that I would ask you to check your email. So one of the main ways that we keep up with parents is that I send a series of family newsletters. And so you'll see they have that masthead at the top. So you're receiving those. In this transition during this summer between high school and college, I send those 2 times a month to this cohort of parents. So you won't get them in the subsequent summers, but we're trying to keep you on track and keep you apprised of what's going on for your student. So you'll get them more frequently this summer. And your student is also getting a series of newsletters. So we want both of you to read your newsletters. And so theirs is called the Navigator First Year Newsletter. So they've already received, you've each received 1 issue of these already. So please keep that in mind. And in the last newsletter, I showed you where the archive of the Navigator newsletters is located. And so if you want to read their newsletter, so you can kind of use that as another sort of talking point or kind of keeping up with them, look at that link and you can use those. So the other thing that's important for your student this summer is a series of new student modules. So these are online instructional components that are the beginning of their orientation to Tulane. And so they'll open each month. There's different topics that are addressed each month. And it's really important that they keep up with those. There's required information. Some of them have like quiz type things to assess how well they're understanding the information that's provided. It guides them to do different things that they need to do to launch themselves at Tulane. So it's very, very important. So be aware of that, that they've got new student modules. I've been told, and I mentioned this in the newsletter, that this first one in May has a lot of content. And so a student needs to devote about 2.5 to 3 hours to complete everything. They can pause it. They don't have to do it in 1 2.5 hour stretch. But you want to, make sure that with everything that's going on in your student's life, that they are devoting some time to this. It's really quite important. So the other thing that's going to be really important is that there's this great new student checklist. And so I would say, make sure they're using it. Make sure that they read over all of it so they just get a sense of how everything flows. And it's organized chronologically, so they can see when the key deadlines are in different months. But I think it's really smart to review it once a week. And one of my best pro tips that I could give families is that it's probably a good idea for you to even just sort of make a contract, make a plan with your student that you're going to review it with them once a week, because there are certain parts that you need to support, especially in this first year as they're learning everything. Or assuming that management for different functions that heretofore you've always managed for them. And so I do think it's good to have sort of a checklist check-in and do that at least once a week would really help you feel more secure about how things are going and help your student kind of make a habit of it. Maybe halfway through the summer, you won't need to do that anymore and they've got it down. But I think especially at the beginning, it's really good to do that. Another very important point that I want to make that that came about from one parent's experience a few summers ago is I just want to stress, even though there's a place on that website where you could download a PDF of the checklist, use the online version, because the online version has hyperlinks embedded into it to more detail, or perhaps to a form the student needs to complete, or maybe a procedure they have to outline, or just if you only looked at the face of it, if you printed it out, you'd see things that were underlined but not know what that means, or you don't know where to find those things. And I talked with a parent a couple of years ago and we're like, well, we looked at that checklist, but we just couldn't figure out what we were supposed to do from that. So use the online version. So now, again, you don't need to write these things down because I'm going to, you'll have access to these slides, but I'm going to point out the things where these are the parts of the bike ride that you need to be close by when they're on the training wheels, when you're helping be the training wheels, to give them some extra support. So I'm going to go through a few different components. So this is not the whole checklist, but I'm pointing out the parts that are most likely to need some input or support or guidance from parents. So there are some, and I'm going to point them out in categories of things. This is organized differently from the way the checklist is organized in terms of the chronology of things, but I'm going to give you categories. So the first category we're going to start with, I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So that's where we're going to start with basic needs, food, shelter, and safety. So May 22nd, next week, there's a deadline to complete the housing application. And along with that is the student evacuation plan if Tulane closes for a hurricane or other emergency. And I know that sentence just made some of your blood pressure go up, but we've got a whole webinar coming up that is about, hurricane evacuation procedures and guidance for you as a family. So, so just know that we've done this before. We're really adept at it. We've got lots of procedures, and we will offer guidance. So that's one of those first basic needs kinds of things, both a shelter and a safety issue. And then on June 3rd, the dining plan portal opens. So that's when it opens, and they have time to change or make adjustments to the type of plan they're on. And the last day to change that plan without any type of additional fee would be August 23rd. So they've got a lot of time to look at that, but that's where they're gonna get information about how they will get fed while they are here. So the next component would be educational. So a couple of the pieces that I think are more likely to need your input or attention are that they need to request any needed accommodations and submit documentation of that with our Goldman Center for Student Accessibility. And so they need to start that as soon as possible. And we have a whole family webinar next week about that process. And so if your student received any kind of accommodations or anticipates that that'll be needed for their time at the university, then that's something they need to start so that the staff have plenty of time to review those and make arrangements, and so that your student understands what's possible here and how that's different at the university level than it is at the K through 12 level. So another educational thing that's really important is an important deadline. July 1st is their deadline to submit their final high school transcript to the Office of Undergrad Admission. So the next component is health. And so certainly you as their parents have been the primary gatekeeper for taking them to the doctor, knowing what kinds of things are needed, and how they get immunizations and how they have just routine health checks, as well as, going to the doctor when they're sick. And you've managed their health insurance. So this is a big transition now for students to take on the responsibility for those things. But certainly, because you've always been the manager so far, and for many of you, your student's going to be on your employer health insurance plan, you need to be involved in this. So here are some deadlines for that, for looking at the health insurance requirements that Tulane has. And there's a process by which they can submit the elements of your plan so that an independent third party reviews that to see if it meets our requirements. And if it doesn't, and something is needed, then that third party will let you know what's possible. Or we have a plan that's called Tulane Sponsored Student Health Insurance Plan, which goes by the acronym TSHIP. And so there's a specific enrollment and waiver process. So they either have to waive TSHIP because your insurance is going to be used, or they enroll in TSHIP. And so they'll get many reminders of that, but that's vitally important that they check that information, start to look at that, and follow through on what's needed there. And then July 15th is when they have to submit immunization forms, and they do that through the patient portal that they will have with Tulane Campus Health. And then if your student has any ongoing mental health concerns or even physical concerns, perhaps they have needed ongoing physical therapy for something, and you want to make sure that they'll be able to continue care once they're here, then we have a care coordinator in both the counseling center for mental health issues and a care coordinator within our student health center for any more like physical health kinds of things. And especially if you want to help your student get transition to an appropriate New Orleans community provider who might be able to provide more consistent care over an extended number of years and provide that on a frequency that's greater than the number of counseling sessions they can have through our counseling center, then that can be really important. And so that's a good thing to go ahead and kind of dive into this summer. We'll have much more information sent out about that in the newsletters, but that can help maintain that continuity of care in those regards. So we want to make sure your students supported for that. So then, of course, most of you are managing the financial aspect of your students' lives and even continuing while they're here at the university. And so it's just important that your student check their financial aid website. They look on their Gibson online portal. There'll be information if they're receiving financial aid or if they have received a Tulane Merit Scholarship that's going to come through, Tulane to support their financial concerns here. Then they need to review those things because we want to make sure that they've checked all the boxes and done anything that they need to so that there's no delay in their aid getting to them. And then, as I mentioned earlier, in the other aspect of financial issues with their accounts receivable student bill, then they may add you as an authorized user to their student account. And they can add multiple people if there's several people, in your family who are going to be helping with that payment of those bills and need to see the statements and such. So I know a lot of parents have the question, when will we get the first bill? So the first statement will be available usually around July 15th. They haven't published these dates. They're usually mid-July, and then the first payment is due mid-August. More detailed information coming about that, but it's usually one of those dates, or if one of those dates falls on a weekend, they'll make it a Friday or Monday. So I know that all of you are keenly interested in how things go for moving that student of yours from your house to our campus. And so I just want to briefly go over some of these things so you kind of see how this information will roll out. It's definitely a rolling out kind of process. Different pieces of this get done at different times over the summer. So in the early summer, there'll be a really detailed guide that will be on the Housing and Residence Life. We call that HRL. Posted online. It'll be a detailed move-in guide. From later in May until mid-June, sometime in that window, the Housing and Residence Life Office will send students residence hall assignments or their assigned move-in day, time slot, and other instructions. So move-in for first-year students happens over 3 days. Your student will be assigned one of those days and a specific arrival window. And so they will receive that. And then there's a bit of time when if your family needs to adjust that, they'll be able to go back into a portal and make an adjustment. So they assign everybody first so they can try to distribute students kind of evenly over those 3 days because that helps everything proceed a lot more smoothly on campus during those days. If those of you who have already been to our campus know that we're mostly a very pedestrian campus and we're smack in the middle of a residential neighborhood. So there's not huge parking lots on campus at each residence hall. And so there are lots of things that are done to kind of manage the flow of things that day. So pacing it out over 3 days and pacing people's arrival throughout the day really helps with that. It'll make it much easier for all of you once you're here. So then in late June to mid-July, students will receive their housing room assignments. And then later in July, our mail services department will send students their mailbox numbers and then really detailed shipping instructions for those of you who want to ship your students' belongings. Excuse me. So that'll come to your home address, a hard copy of it, but they'll also get an electronic copy of that to their student's email address in case you're going to be on vacation or you're out of town or they're a camp counselor somewhere else or away for some reason. So it'll go in both formats. And then in July, we will also present a tutorial on move-in and shipping services. So I'll announce that in the newsletter, and that's a really good thing to watch if you've got questions about how all that goes. And you'll be sent detailed information in written form, but sometimes it's really helpful to have that live webinar or have a tutorial so that you can hear somebody explain everything. So I know another thing that you're keen to figure out is your move-in visit to New Orleans. And so I want to give you some advice about this. So most parents arrive the day before their assigned student's move-in day. So you can just get here and have plenty of time. They're helping their student move in and get settled on that assigned move-in day. And then the parents return home that night or perhaps the next morning. So we do welcome you to be here. We have things for parents going on then, and we know that that's a big rite of passage to move your student in and help them get settled. But then they've got really important things to do. So we will be sorry to see you go, but we do need you to leave at a certain time so that they can focus on everything else they need to do. And so students have required orientation activities, and that's called Hullabaloo Hello here at Tulane. So those required activities start at 10 a.m. the morning after move-in. So you really can consider that you might be able to meet them for breakfast or something that next morning, but there are a lot of people who kind of say their goodbye on that night of move-in and then know that they're going to have to check out of their hotel and get to the airport and everything, the next day. So please make sure that you follow that time frame so that you really can support your student in fully getting immersed in orientation and following instructions and meeting the guides that they will have and meeting other fellow students and getting all the important information that is provided that week to help them have a smooth start at Tulane. So on their move-in day, students do have mandatory meetings at 5 p.m. and parents have a meeting at the exact same time. So there's a family welcome event for all of you parents and family members. So students will be in their activity, you'll be in yours, and senior university administrators will be there to welcome you to the Tulane community. So a little pro tip for everybody that might help you as you're trying to plan your visit is that given that that's how the day flows, and it's a very busy and hot day because it's August in New Orleans, if one of the things you really want to do when you come to New Orleans, and it is one of the things that's high on everybody's list when they come to New Orleans, is you might want to have some kind of nice dinner out, then you might want to plan that more celebratory dinner on the night before your student's move-in day so that you won't be rushed. And so I just want you to consider that. Now I'll give you another tip to make it even easier is that later in the summer, this website will open and it's a special restaurant promotion that happens in New Orleans every August. It's called Culinary New Orleans. It's spelled C-O-O-L because it's the only thing that's cool in New Orleans in the month of August. But it's a great way you can make reservations at a host of great restaurants, and a lot of them are offering special fixed price menus, so you get a little bit better deal on some of those great restaurants, and they're all over the city. So you can kind of look at that and, that might help you with that element if you want to make sure you incorporate that into your visit. Now, on your student's move-in day, their Tulane meal plan will already have started. And so you could join them on campus and they will be able to use their meal plan for that meal, and you can pay at the door, if you want to join them. But we understand that getting around town, getting from the airport, managing your meals and stuff, those are all things that we want to help you kind of figure out how you're going to manage that. So I'll just give you those tips. So, the other thing that I want to talk to you about tonight is that was a lot of the tasky kinds of things, a lot of those nuts and bolts that have to be managed. And I know that those can be things that really consume your thoughts and probably parents' thoughts even more than students. You might have to be dragging them along to kind of get them to start packing and get things in order and stuff. And so I completely understand that can be a big challenge this summer, especially when, like I said, they might still be in high school for a while, or they're traveling, or you all have a family vacation, or they're really interested in spending a lot of time with their friends at home before they all disperse to different universities and such. So the task type things can become the focus to the exclusion of helping your student with some of the other kinds of transition that they need to make. And for some of that, that's in kind of understanding that they're growing up, they are going to be treated as adults, they are taking on more responsibilities, and they're going to be faced with a lot of different things that they haven't been so far, and you aren't right there with them to do that. So we have a series of webinar conversations that'll be coming up in June that are an examination of values and what Tulane's values are, and also what resources we provide to help students in those different areas of their life when they're here. And this can be a really helpful starting point for you to have conversations. So we really do not want this information to just lie there with you. And it's not information that is only addressed to students. Now they're getting a lot of this support and education in all of the different ways through their modules, through their newsletters, through all the activities that'll happen for them. And they'll be living here with us. They will be surrounded by these resources. But a lot of these talks about values are some things that are very important for a family to have together and for you to kind of get on the same page with your student and see how they're doing with these things. So consider this kind of arming you, preparing you with background so that you can guide that conversation and you can open up that conversation with your student. And we are presenting them in June so that you've got the whole rest of the summer to find the ideal time to start that conversation. And you may want to do it a little at a time as the summer goes on. You might want to be very structured about it. It's completely up to you. We just want to give you the background and the resource and let you hear from some university leaders about how we approach those things and what we would recommend for you. So those dates and times will be announced in the upcoming newsletter, but these are the topics. So you'll see they are some of those heavy topics that I mentioned earlier that are part of the students' transition, but it's better that we're all prepared for helping them navigate that. So there's one that's just a welcome to the Tulane community and what our values are. There's also one on sex and healthy relationships that focuses on respect, consent, and care. Another on alcohol and drugs that focuses on responsibility, well-being, and recovery. And then one focused on academics, and it's different than them just signing up for the classes they're going to take in the fall. It's about academic growth, academic opportunities, what academic integrity is all about, and then how they access support for their academic journey here at Tulane. So those are really important. I hope you'll join us for those. So we're coming up on sort of the end of the time here. So I might skip a couple of things. You'll see these things on the slides when you can access those later. But I want to just say there are a lot of people here who will assist your students. And especially in that first year, we've got particularly assigned people for those roles. The Hullabaloo Hello is that celebratory welcome that's, has everything from group activities to presentations to more educational components, and then other things just to kind of celebrate their entrance to the university. And so that's that, beginning time of the fall semester. And you'll see these other things, but take a look at the slide when you get the chance to see this. I do think that this is not going to happen for several more months. So I'll remind you and through the newsletters about these things, but anticipate your communication pattern might change. Always encourage your student to take initiative to meet people and ask questions. There are no dumb questions. Please help us normalize that, normalize awkward. Help offer the perspective that everybody's going to feel new, awkward, lonely, not sure of themselves. They just don't want to show it. There can be a lot of posturing sometimes, or just a lot of, wanting to kind of hide that. This is, again, another place where our peer mentors are fabulous because they can relate to your new student as somebody who just recently navigated all of this. And students are much more likely to want to hear that advice from someone close to them in age than from the rest of us. Please, as a parent, resist the urge to jump in and solve your students' problems. I encourage you instead, take this approach. Listen, encourage, remind. They've been given a lot of information, but they had to take in a lot at once. And so sometimes they need you to point out these different things. You're also learning in a parallel fashion about what the resources are and refer them back to those resources. And then the other thing too to expect is that they'll be on a high when they first get here. It'll be really exciting. Everything's new. They're meeting so many people. They're in a new place, but there's kind of a honeymoon period in that transition and it can end. And so then frustrations will set in. And so you have to be a really astute listener to kind of figure out what they're really talking about or what they're really frustrated about. And you might have to kind of diagnose that referred pain and redirect your student back to the resources to find solutions, because they may say it's all about their roommate, but it's really more about the fact that, oh, they landed in a class that seems a lot harder than anything they ever anticipated. So be aware of that. So now is the time you can submit questions. We really are, at the end of our time, but I will stay here for several more minutes to take some questions. I hope that all of that information helped answer some questions that you came with, and that you saw that we're providing even more detailed information about some of these topics, like academic advising and course registration, accessibility at Tulane and how students can apply for accommodations, and how all those procedures work at Tulane. And then there is one on hurricane preparedness. And then we'll have those other Tulane Talks series. And then later in the summer, there'll be some more offerings on a host of other topics. So trust that there's more information coming your way. But if you have a few questions right now, I'll take a look at those and see how many we can answer. This is my contact information. You don't even need to remember who I am. Just remember who you are. You are families. And if you email families@tulane.edu, then I will see that and be able to get back to you. So let's see. So one of those first questions that of course I could anticipate is like, how will you know if they're passing classes if you can't see their grades directly? So we really encourage you to, have a conversation with your student and ask them about that, but ask along the way too. And so one thing that I always point out to parents is that students at Tulane also get midterm grades. And in the newsletters, I'll alert you to when the midterm grades are going to be coming out. And so that's a really good time to kind of check in with them. Those grades are not final recorded grades. They get those as an early indicator of how they're doing in the class. And the midterm grades also always come out before the final deadline to drop a class. And so that gives them some time to consult with an academic advisor or maybe even the professor to see, how do I get back on track? Or am I taking enough credits that I could drop one class and pick it up later, or change to something else in a new semester, so that I can focus on the other classes. And so, I think that this is a transition. So it is something for you to kind of get used to find ways to talk with your student and to tell your student, I'm not going to be seeing every single one of your grades. So you've got to keep up with those things, and you've got to kind of learn how Tulane manages that. And then if you want me to be aware of that, then you can sign this form. And then again, keep in mind though, this is very important. It doesn't give you direct access to their grades. It allows somebody at Tulane to talk to you about their record. And so that would usually be an academic advisor. And so it still doesn't mean you're going to have just direct access to see it. So as I talk to students over time, I've heard everything from, I willingly tell my parents what my grades are. I just kind of share them. Sometimes I take a screenshot of it and say, here's how I did this semester. And others who are like, I am managing that on my own, and I chat with my parent about it. And, sometimes, they don't know, but they are trusting that I'm doing okay. We do have a situation that if your student were on probation, or they were in a risky spot, then there is some information that can be shared with families about that. So if you please attend the academic advising and course registration webinar, and our representative from academic advising can address that in more detail. So, there is a question about sexual assault on campus and what's been done in terms of preventing it. So that's a really big question, and the answer would take more time than I have. So I would really encourage you to sign up for that webinar that will happen in June. That includes the information about sex and healthy relationships, because we'll also talk about resources for sexual assault prevention, education, and response. And so I want you to know that we've got really deep resources in all of those areas. And so I'm sorry I can't go into more detail now, but I hope you'll pay attention to the other things that we'll be providing. So so then one question was, if roommate selection starts in early June, how can residence halls come before that? So they do have to make their application they have to submit an application so that the housing office knows they are coming to Tulane. They're going to live on campus. They're part of that they're meeting that requirement. And then there's some resources to help students find roommates, or, they don't have to indicate a roommate, but it does come in stages. So just trust that all those things are outlined in their more full checklist for the students. Let's see. So somebody's asked about links for different things. So again, all of you will have access. You'll get a follow-up email that'll tell you when everything's available online in our archive, and you'll be able to see those travel savings, the link for the travel discounts and such. But if you remember families.tulane.edu, navigate to the that top right corner where you can find the menu, then go to events, and all of the travel information is under the events tab. So this question was, how and when do we pay tuition? So I had mentioned that the accounts receivable statement will be available around July 15th, and then it's due around August 15th. Those dates haven't been exactly set, but they always fall really close to the 15th of those months. So, the move-in days are determined. I think they are kind of randomly assigned over those 3 days. Once they know who's going to be assigned to which residence hall, so that they kind of portion out the number of students moving in to each residence hall, so that it's not like everybody moves into one residence hall on the same day, or, so they're really carefully paced out. So if by any chance you have an issue with move-in dates or anything, that would need to be a request to the Housing and Residence Life Department, and their email is housing@tulane.edu. But I strongly urge you to wait until the date's been assigned, and then let the students use that period to adjust. But if you have a really extenuating circumstance, like a student is recovering from a surgery, or your family is, out of the country or something, then, if you have a really extenuating circumstance that requires a different move-in time, then that should really be, you should reach out to housing, and probably to the first year experience office too, to understand what your student might miss from orientation. We really certainly don't want anybody to miss anything once their Hullabaloo Hello program begins. There are specific immunization that Tulane requires, and somebody asked about if those might need to be notarized or translated, then the student can look on their checklist, find the information about immunizations. Some of that is not presented and pushed out until later in the summer, because the summer is when those contracts with the health insurance might kind of change over to the new year. Immunizations, I think you could already find all of those things outlined on the Campus Health website. So have your student look at the checklist, follow the links. And so they'll find out about their academic advising through emails sent to them. It's really important. And so make sure they're following anything that they get from advising, so they know about advisors. They will have an advising team that works with them this summer, and then they'll be assigned their first year advisor later in the summer, because oftentimes there's some change that happens in what the students' academic interests are from the time that they filled out their application to, come to Tulane. And this summer, they may have really shifted sort of what they're interested in. And so they again sort of portion out the number of students per advisor, and they align them with advisors who have some particular focus areas. So let's see here. So the slides and the video of the webinar will be on the families.tulane.edu website under the communications tab, but we will email everyone who registered for this webinar and let you know when those are available, and we'll give you the link to find them. So I think that if you are not sure what your hurricane plan would be, then I think that it's really important to attend our hurricane preparedness webinar. We'll give you a lot of information to help you understand what's needed and how your student can plan and how that all works. And so, so you do need to have something in that plan. It can't just be empty. So join our webinar or watch it, watch it later. If you can't join us for the live webinar, then just look for that on the family's website. Here's a question: how long are parents required to stay at Tulane? So I did mention that most families arrive the night before their students assign move-in day. They help them move in, get unpacked, settle in their room. At 5 p.m., students go to a meeting, parents go to a parallel meeting with university administrators. You've got the evening that's, pretty unscheduled. There's one special reception for a particular set of parents who elect to go to that one. But you've really got most of the evening free. And so by 10 a.m. the morning after their move-in, students are in required activities. So you really do need to leave well before that, so they are focused and attending to all of that. So the students don't need to attend our hurricane preparedness webinar for families, because hurricane preparedness is one of the elements of the module that they have for May. So we used to present that to parents later in the summer, but they decided to move that up in the students' modules early in the summer. And so that's why we're presenting that topic for you parents this month as well. So they should just go through the paces of that, go through the instruction that's in the module about hurricane preparedness. And it might even be more broadly described as emergency preparedness that explains other types of emergencies that could happen and how Tulane manages those and what their roles are and how they respond. So one other question was, did most students choose a roommate or do many go random? I kind of hate the way they describe it as going random, but I've heard that it's about 50-50. And so a student should not panic if they feel like they don't already know somebody or haven't met somebody through social media or, anything like that, to select somebody to match up with. There are lots of students who are assigned, and one of the things that kind of supports that in either case, whether they've chosen somebody they already knew, in some ways it might even be more important with somebody they already knew, because they make a lot of assumptions that they have the same lifestyle issues with somebody they already know from home, when they might actually mesh better with somebody who's new. But the resident advisors actually guide the students to do roommate agreements once they're here. And so that helps them think through those different elements of how do we best share this space? What do we need to be mindful of in terms of managing this home life that we have in the residence hall with our study life, and what our values are, and how our habits are. So there's some different things that the Housing and Residence Life program does to help them with that. So I think this will be, I'm going to call last call for questions, because we're a little bit more than 10 minutes over. So if you've got one more burning question, type it in. Or if you've got a comment you would like to make about the webinar, then you're welcome to do that. But you can also always offer me feedback at families@tulane.edu. But this question was, do the modules have to be done by the end of each month or by move-in? So that is a great question. So they do need to be done in that order that month. So I know that I think they got access to those when they got their first newsletter, that I think was May 6th. So they've got a shorter time frame this month. So do talk with your student about how they're making time to fit in the attention to their module. They might not all be as lengthy as the one for May is. The one in August, I know because they arrive mid-August, is intentionally shorter in August, but they do need to carve out some time. So I think a good rule of thumb might be making sure that they carve out 3 hours, because they told me the first one might take 2.5 to 3 hours. They might not take that much time in the subsequent ones, but some of them have video components that they watch and then they answer questions about. Others of them have things they fill out, so they use a variety of sort of instructional methods to do that, to keep it engaging. But they do need to attend to it. They do need to complete them. As I said before, they can pause it, so they don't have to do it all in one stretch, but they do need to fit it in. And included in the May module is everything they need to know to get prepared for their academic advising next month. So that's really, really important. Okay, I'll look at another couple of questions. So, so the dates for move-in, and I'm sorry I don't have that right in front of me, and I don't want to get those dates wrong. It's a Sunday, Monday, Tuesday in August, and I put those dates in the newsletter. So please look back to the newsletter for that, or you can look on the First Year Experience website. There's information there as well. I'm sorry, I just don't have a calendar open in front of me, and I have so many details in my head right now. So this is a great question. I'm glad somebody brought this up. So there are exceptions to some of these things. And so there are some students who are part of sports teams or the band or the cheerleaders team that have an early move-in. So they're considered early arrivals. And so pay attention to the information you'll get directly from those sources, from athletics, from the team coach, from the band department. My understanding is that the section leaders of the band also kind of connect with the students in their section, you know, based on their instrument, and they become sort of their extra guide. And so they will provide that information about how they'll help support them through move-in. And then for those families, since you won't be here on those days that we're having that activity for parents, you know, later in August on the general move-in days, we are recording one of those presentations. And so that'll be available on the website after it's been edited and everything. So a couple of days after that. So probably by that, if not before the September 1 newsletter, I'll put it in the September 1 newsletter. I'll put the link to that. And then if you're always welcome, you know, to email families@tulane.edu, let's say by the third week of August, to ask about, you know, the link to that presentation. And I would encourage you to see it, since it'll be presented when you're back home. So one last, so Housing and Residence Life will send the move-in information, the assigned move-in day in June. I think it was, yeah, so it'll be coming about that time. And one comment that some kids are still in school now, finishing out the year, they have school till the end of May. We certainly know that some students are even still in high school until, you know, somewhat into June. And so we do understand that students are waiting to get their AP accreditation, or whatever they call that process. So academic advising is completely aware of that. That'll be one of the things they discuss with students. And I think it's one of the things that's in the module about how to prepare for that. So the advisors can guide them to take the courses that they think they would get if they get all the credit from their AP classes, and then they can help them change that if needed later. So tell your student to pay close attention to the module about academic advising and course registration. And then if they are taking AP classes and they're not going to get that information until later in the summer, to pay close attention to that when they're in their advising appointments. So yeah, so thank you. One very kind parent looked up those dates for me. So it's August 11th, 12th, and 13th. Those are the move-in days for first year students. So again, your student will be assigned one of those days and a particular 30-minute window to arrive. It's not that you have to finish all the unpacking within 30 minutes, but that's when they're trying to, you know, manage that traffic flow. And some people rent cars and drive to campus, and other people will try to ship as much as they can and put things in suitcases and then, you know, take a cab or Uber or Lyft to campus. So you will get information to guide you in all of that. They'll tell you the exact address to give your, you know, car driver if needed. So keep all that in mind. So more information to come, but I hope this has been helpful to give you an overview of what we want to do to support families all the time. And then especially in this key transition period where we're all trying to prepare your student to take on more responsibility and be the driver of this car. But we know that you're still there with them in this time, and that you have quite a vested interest in their growth, their development, their success. And so we always want you to feel like we really care about our families and want to support you in supporting them. And so we're going to want to work with you and provide that guidance, and especially provide it in ways that you can access from home. So webinars, e-newsletters, the website, and all of that. But then there is this toll-free number not that probably people care about toll-free numbers anymore because you're just on your phone plan, it's the way it exists, but you can also call. And so that's the toll-free number, and that comes to me. So I'm happy to help you. I'm really excited about every new class that joins us. I think we have a really special community here at Tulane, and we really do think that parents are a great, important part of that. So thank you, everyone, for joining us tonight. I appreciate those of you who stayed with us a bit past 7, so thank you for that. And again, you'll be able to access this information, so it's easy for you to get all this reference information. And thank you for the little claps. I appreciate that. So we really care about you and want your student to have a successful time. There may be challenges, there may be new things for them to learn, but that's all growth enhancing. So that's what we want for your student. So thanks again, everyone. Thank you for joining us. I will close now. Thanks so much.